Hi folks, and welcome back to Meaningful Money and the welcome, I hope, return of video. Hopefully you're happy to see the video back. I know I am. This is where it all started and I'm looking forward to doing more of these. Now clearly I'm inside, I'm used to doing these outside. Man, the weather is bad. So, in a blatant rip-off of one of my favourite YouTubers, a guy called Peter McKinnon, he does something called 2 Minute Tuesday. Welcome folks to the ever so slightly different 5 Minute Friday. And what I'm going to do is answer a question, deal with a topic really quickly, really succinctly every Friday in a video. But for an added bonus for the podcast listeners, I'm going to put the audio of each of these little videos into the podcast feed so that the die-hard podcast listeners can get, hopefully, excellent value as well. That's not at all confusing, is it? I'm going to put the audio of the video in the podcast stream, but you can still watch the video here, even if you like video and audio. But if it's audio only, you'll be able to get the benefit of the video as well. So we're filming in glorious 4K, 24 frames per second. It'll probably be downgraded to 1080p for upload, but do you care about that stuff? Of course not. That's the sort of thing that keeps me awake. What we want to do is to get on with the content. So let's roll the titles. Quick drink of water, wet the whistle. So, for the very first 5 Minute Friday, let's put 5 minutes on the clock down here, and let's get going. Today's question comes from David from Wigan, who asks, I need my phone. David asks, if a pension is invested mainly in a particular company's funds, e.g. Vanguard, and that company happens to go bust, what would happen to the money? Would the government offer some protection similar to the banks? And would the fact that it's invested in stocks and bonds mean it's not part of the company's assets and therefore safe? That's an excellent question, Mr. David from Wigan. David is talking about the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, which is a government scheme designed to protect you against things going really wrong. And there are two levels. First of all, for money held in a bank, the amount of protection you can get if that bank goes bust is £85,000 per person per bank. So if you're a couple and you've got a joint account, you can hold twice that, £170,000 between the two of you with any one bank. You need to be careful though, because there are several banks which might be part of the same banking group and therefore have one banking license, which means that might just be one bank for the purposes of compensation. So be careful. Now, investments are different, and the total amount of cover you can get within the compensation scheme for investments is £50,000 per person per firm. Now that sounds simple enough, but of course it isn't. The FSCS is designed to cover if things go wrong with what they call designated investments, and that's stocks and shares, unit trusts, futures and options, personal pension plans, and other long-term investments like maybe endowments. Remember those? Now, it's important to understand what it is that the compensation scheme actually covers, what is meant by a loss underneath the compensation scheme. And we're talking primarily about three things: bad investment advice, poor investment management, and misrepresentation by a firm which has subsequently gone bust. Now that would cover advice given by a financial advisor, for example, and if the advisor firm has gone bust, then you can maybe claim on the compensation scheme. Important to understand though that if you've received bad advice and lost money as a result, I'll caveat that in a minute, as long as the financial advice company is still in existence, you need to claim to them and they will have insurance, hopefully, to pay out any claims. You can only go to the compensation scheme if your advice firm has gone bust. So, bad investment advice, poor investment management, and misrepresentation, meaning you invested in something which you ought not to have done, and where the advice firm that's advised you to do that has gone bust. Those are the things that are covered by the compensation scheme. But investing these days is fairly complex. There are different layers, different levels. You might have some shares held within a fund, held in a pension, which is held on a platform. And that's 4 different levels of investment. So who owns what? What's going on? What happens if things go south? Well, if you invest via a platform, the money with them is subject to the client money and assets rules. And the platform is required by law to keep your money separate from their own. So that means that if the platform you invest with goes bust, the creditors of that firm cannot access your money. So that's fairly straightforward, but what about funds? If you invest in a fund, then the underlying assets are held in a nominee structure. So that means that the fund manager can administer your investments no problem, but you are still the beneficial owner of those investments. It's still your money. It doesn't belong to Fidelity or 7IM, whoever your investment manager is. So You are the beneficial owner. If the investment manager goes bust, their creditors can't access your money. So we've talked about platform money, we've talked about money held in a fund. What if you're a direct investor? What if you haven't sought advice, you've invested yourself? Well, you need to be really careful here. Maybe you invest on a self-invested platform, you buy an underlying stock and that company goes bust. What happens then? Well, this is where it does get complicated because it depends very much on the relationship between you, the platform, the underlying stock. Who exactly owns what? You need to check your T's and C's very, very carefully. And if in any doubt whatsoever, because let's face it, T's and C's are impenetrable at best, ask the question from somebody in the platform that you're proposing to use. They all have call centers and hopefully you'll get a decent answer from there. But make sure you understand the relationship between the underlying fund that you hold, underlying share, the platform that you've chosen, and you. Who owns what? So, some final thoughts. Let's wrap things up here. You cannot claim on the compensation scheme for losses due to market movements. You might be able to if you think you've been badly advised, but again, remember the claim has to go to the advice company if they're still in existence. Always check the relationships between the different aspects of your investment plan. You, any platform you might be using, the underlying fund managers that you're employing to manage your money. Check that out. Read your T's and C's very, very carefully. Final thing I would say is not to lose too much sleep over this. There's more protection here in the UK than pretty much anywhere else in the developed world. It's going to take something pretty significant for you to lose your money and not be able to get a compensation scheme claim. Remember the limits though. But if you invest wisely by spreading your money around different fund managers, different underlying assets, different platforms, maybe if we're talking significant sums, you should give yourself the best chance of being protected. But you know what? If things go really pear-shaped and somebody throws a nuke at somebody else, then all bets are off and we'll be trading chickens for next door neighbor's carrots and stuff. So I hope that's helpful. I've no idea because I've yet to edit this whether that was even anywhere near 5 minutes, but hopefully it was by the time I've taken out all the mistakes and stuff. But let me know what you think. Leave a comment under the video on YouTube or on the website itself. And if you enjoyed the podcast, then leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. You know the drill. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.